6.
All right, thank you, Ian. In Ottawa, it remains under lockdown tonight. From our borders to our governments, a day of terror and tragedy that Canadians will never forget. This was the unbelievable scene in the hallowed halls of the House of Commons today. A gunman chased and shot dead after killing a Canadian soldier at the National War Memorial. Good evening. Tara is off tonight. It was a chaotic scene as the attack unfolded in the heart of our nation. A young reservist killed while standing guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The gunman then stormed the centre block of Parliament before being shot and killed by the Sergeant-at-Arms. Tonight, shocked Canadians are left wondering how they can protect themselves. Scott Lowry reports.
The Hall of Honour on Parliament Hill under the Peace Tower. The scene of an unprecedented and dramatic shootout. This incident started about 600 meters away at the National War Memorial. A lone soldier, 24-year-old Corporal Nathan Cirillo, on guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier, ambushed by gunfire.
There was a man with a rifle shooting at a bunch of people. So we, I yelled at all my guys, there's guys shooting, so everyone, get down, get down.
Witnesses described a man getting out of a grey car with no license plate attacking the reservist from Hamilton. The gunman shot dead Michael Zahaf Bebo.
It was crazy. Everyone was running around. There was people on the ground.
The gunman jumped over some bushes and ran to the centre block. MPs from all parties meeting in their weekly caucuses.
This is kind of a day that changes everything.
Parliament Hill and a wide swath of the nation's capital locked down.
How somebody gets a rifle walking down the Hall of Honour, standing outside the Library of Parliament, will be an interesting piece of investigation.
It's in our responsibility to protect the public. If we would have known that this was coming, we would have been able to disrupt it.
The RCMP Commissioner gave Prime Minister Stephen Harper updates as the incident unfolded. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those who were attacked, the Prime Minister's office said. The Prime Minister is safe and not on Parliament Hill and being briefed. The FBI is helping with this investigation.
It emphasizes the degree to which we have to remain vigilant when it comes to dealing with these kinds of acts of senseless violence or terrorism.
I would imagine that currently both the CSIS and RCMP are reviewing their files and re-examining the intelligence and trying to make sense as to what actually transpired today, what transpired earlier this week, and what could potentially unfold in the coming days.
After this incident and the hit-and-run killing of a soldier in Quebec, new orders.
All soldiers from the Joint Task Force East, that is to say all troops stationed in Quebec, will no longer stop in public places in military uniform.
What happened at this memorial to a man in uniform and what erupted in this hallowed hall of the people has shocked the nation. Scott Wood, CTV News.
Now to the gunman. CTV News has learned Canadian officials have identified him as 32-year-old Michael Zahaf Bebo, a Canadian citizen of Algerian descent from Quebec. This photo is from an ISIS Twitter account that has now been suspended. There are reports his passport had been seized when he was designated a high-risk traveler, though the government has not said if he was among the 90 Canadians on a terror watch list. CTV's Peter Ackman is live in Ottawa tonight. He joins me now. So, Peter, what more are you hearing about the gunman?
Well, we're hearing that he came up, as you heard in Scott Lowry's piece. He came up to the War Memorial and without any type of warning, two shots into Corporal Cirillo at point-blank range. We're hearing that he is from the Montreal area. That we are outside his mother's house right now. With several reporters are trying to track down some background information on him. We also understand he's been in trouble with the law a couple of times, including attempted robbery in BC and another situation in Quebec.
Meantime, what is actually going on the Hill tonight?
Well, there's still a lockdown in process. We're hearing from some of the MPs. They're tweeting out that they've been allowed to leave. There are several of the buildings that have been evacuated, but we're hearing now that there are still quite a few people inside the Parliament buildings and other buildings around that immediate area that are in lockdown. A lot of the buildings and the areas have been cordoned off to make sure that people aren't getting anywhere near. We know the investigation is continuing right now. The lights around the War Memorial have been turned off. Only police investigative lights are shining just at the base as they continue to investigate and gather evidence of what exactly happened today.
All right, thanks very much. CTV's Peter Ackman in Ottawa tonight. An Alberta cabinet minister was frighteningly close to the deadly shooting today. Already, many experts say it has all the hallmarks of a terror attack. So was Ottawa prepared, and was there anything that could have prevented it? Scott McLean looks at that angle.
When the chaos began on Parliament Hill, Alberta MLA Rick McIver was not where anyone would want to be. Standing at the gates to Parliament Hill, McIver recalls seeing the gunman getting out of a car just meters away.
He was, 5'8", 5'9", almost shoulder-length there. I would say he was walking with purpose, like he had a plan or he was going to do something. He was determined.
The horrifying scene looks a lot like terrorism, says expert Michael Zakulin.
It starts to look like it fits into that larger pattern of the type of attack that ISIS, for example, has been advocating.
If it is terror, it had its desired effect, fear.
They want to get something out of it, so it's kind of better almost to just go on with their daily lives.
After the attack, ISIS supporters applauded it on Twitter. One asks if Canada thinks it can live in peace while bombing overseas. On Friday, the Harper government quietly raised the terror alert, but Zakulin says a less sophisticated attack like this one is even tougher to thwart than a more coordinated plot.
It becomes very difficult because these individuals don't necessarily need to come to the surface as much.
Still, many are wondering how, with so many warnings, security officials couldn't stop today's tragedy. One security expert says it's a valid question.
Despite the significant security that does exist on Parliament Hill, there has to be a reassessment of this and see what more can be done.
Chris Boudreau's son died fighting with ISIS in Syria. She says, yes, security considerations need to be made, but says that won't solve the larger problem of homegrown terror.
That alone is just like putting a Band-Aid on a huge gash without stitching it first. You've got to work at the foundation level too. There's much more work. Early intervention, working with youth, creating awareness.
As much information as possible.
All right, we want to take you now to the unfolding situation in Ottawa. Breaking news as Prime Minister Stephen Harper is about to speak about today's deadly attack.
Center of Parliament Hill walks past rooms filled with Conservative and NDP members of Parliament, the Cabinet, the Prime Minister, and opens fire. He is cornered, gunned down by Hill security, and later dies in hospital. The astonishing sequence of events occurring several minutes after a man had gunned down a soldier near Canada's War Memorial, killing him in spite of the heroic efforts of police and paramedics to keep him alive in the moments after 4 bullets were pumped into him. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister.
Mes chers compatriotes, my fellow Canadians. For the second time this week, there has been a brutal and violent attack on our soil. Today, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of Corporal Nathan Cirillo of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Corporal Cirillo was killed today, murdered in cold blood, as he provided a ceremonial honor guard at Canada's National War Memorial. That sacred place that pays tribute to those who gave their lives so that we can live in a free, democratic, and safe society. Likewise, our thoughts and prayers remain also with the family and friends of Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent, who was killed earlier this week by an ISIL-inspired terrorist. Tonight, we also pray for the speedy recovery of the others injured in these despicable attacks. Fellow Canadians, we've also been reminded today of the compassionate and courageous nature of so many Canadians like those private citizens and first responders who came to provide aid to Corporal Cirillo as he fought for his life. And of course the members of our security forces in the RCMP, the City of Ottawa Police, and in Parliament, who came quickly and at great risk to themselves to assist those of us who were close to the attack. Fellow Canadians, in the days to come, we will learn more about the terrorist and any accomplices he may have had. But this week's events are a grim reminder that Canada is not immune to the types of terrorist attacks we have seen elsewhere around the world. We are also reminded that attacks on our security personnel and on our institutions of governance are, by their very nature, attacks on our country, on our values, on our society, on us Canadians, as a free and democratic people who embrace human dignity for all. But let there be no misunderstanding. We will not be intimidated. Canada will never be intimidated. In fact, this will lead us to strengthen our resolve and redouble our efforts, and those of our national security agencies, to take all necessary steps to identify and counter threats and keep Canada safe here at home. Just as it will lead us to strengthen our resolve and redouble our efforts to work with our allies around the world and fight against the terrorist organizations who brutalize those in other countries with the hope of bringing their savagery to our shores. They will have no safe haven. Well, today has been, without question, a difficult day. I have every confidence that Canadians will pull together with the kind of firm solidarity that has seen our country through many challenges. Together, we will remain vigilant against those at home or abroad who wish to harm us. For now, Lorraine and Ben and Rachel and I join all Canadians in praying for those touched by today's attack. May God bless them and keep our land glorious and free. Mes chers compatriotes,
the Prime Minister will be repeating that statement in French, a very short one, as you heard, saying that as a country we will not be intimidated, that it will only strengthen our resolve. I'm joined on the desk here by Craig Oliver, who has been through many things in our country's history, but Craig, never quite a day like this, but it's pretty clear from the Prime Minister's comments that he believes times have changed.
Yes, and I'm sure he also believes that in the minds of many Canadians, this has strengthened the argument he made that we had to join the coalition against ISIS because, as he said at the time, these people say they're out to get us in our own homes, and therefore we can't afford not to take up arms ourselves against them. He was very measured, very careful, never used the word Islamic. I think some people will appreciate that because I think we have to protect ourselves against some kind of Islamophobia. These people who are committing these crimes are usually unstable, victimized in their minds, and they hate us. And I think in many ways it has nothing to do with the fact that they grasp onto an Islamic religion which has nothing to really say in its origins about hate. It is the very opposite. So
we are starting to learn a little bit more about the gunman who was involved in this incident. ISIS has actually posted an image of the gunman, and his name is Michel Zahef Bibo, and they claim that this is him. We have not been able to independently confirm that, but he is a man in his 30s. The man who attacked Parliament Hill today was described as having long black hair and a white scarf over his mouth. We do know that the alleged assailant, Michel Zahef Bibo, who was killed by Hill security, that he was known to police. This is the Corporal Nathan Cirillo that the Prime Minister was speaking about just a few moments ago. He was a reservist with the Hamilton Argylls, that's an infantry unit there, and he was gunned down by 4 bullets and later died from those injuries. And as you heard the Prime Minister say, they are passing on the country's grief and wishes to his family. I also want to bring in, if I can, Larry Bush. He's a former protective agent and served on the detail with the Prime Minister, and he is standing by in our newsroom here. Mr. Bush, when you heard the Prime Minister's comments, there's still a great deal tonight that we don't really know.
Yes, you're right, Dan. There's a lot we don't know, and of course he didn't go into any details with the backgrounds of either of the shooters this week, although he did tie them together, saying that both of these instances are reflective of the type of security, I suppose, frustrations and challenges that Canada has to look forward to, and I think he expects to look forward, well, expects that he will see those